Good evening, everyone. It is May the 7th. It is 5 p.m., and I'd like to welcome you to the Board of County Commissioners meeting. And with that, I'd like to call this meeting to order and ask that we take a moment of silence. Commissioner Tobias?
Please stand and join me in the pledge. I
pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Item D, can I get a motion for approval of minutes?
So moved.
Motion by Commissioner Lober.
Second.
Second by Commissioner Pritchett. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes unanimously. Commissioner Smith?
Ryan Jarvis. I'm going to read the resolution and then we'll give you the floor. Whereas Ryan Eric Jarvis has achieved the rank of Eagle Scout, the highest rank awarded to a Boy Scout, by completing the demanding requirements of personal development, leadership, and community service. And whereas Ryan joined the Cub Scouts at the age of 7, earning 31 merit badges, held many leadership positions within the troop, while his most enjoyable was as instructor for Troop 720. Ryan experienced high adventure by sailing a 40-foot vessel in the Florida Keys, where he and his fellow scouts caught a record 223 fish, including a 10-foot shark. Whereas Ryan achieved his Eagle Scout rank by designing and building a wooden flag retirement box located in the Vieira Government Center building C lobby, right out there, which provides the residents a location to bring their flags that are in need of retirement. The project benefited the Brevard County local community. A total of 120 hours were dedicated to his project, which included the help of 12 volunteers. And whereas only about 5% of all Boy Scouts earn the Eagle Scout rank, a performance-based achievement with standards that have been well maintained over the years. And whereas, as a senior at Vieira High School, Ryan is a first chair violinist. Just wanted to make sure I said that right. For the Symphonic Orchestra. He is also a member of the Vieira High School Academy of Communication, Art, and Design. And whereas, since earning his Eagle Scout rank on January 24th of this year, Ryan continues to set extraordinary goals for himself as he plans to pursue the engineering field to become a mechanical engineer. He will attend Eastern Florida State College and then transfer to the University of Central Florida under a Bright Future Scholarship. And whereas the lessons learned by obtaining the Eagle Scout rank are important to not only the life of a Scout, but also the enhancement of the nation's leadership. Now, therefore, be it resolved that the Brevard County Board of County Commissioners does hereby unanimously recognize and commend Ryan Eric Jarvis for his outstanding efforts in obtaining his Eagle Scout rank through Troop 720 and offers congratulations and best wishes for a successful future. Done, ordered, and adopted in regular session this 7th day of May, 2019. Madam Chair, I recommend we approve this resolution.
Second.
Motion by Commissioner Smith, second by Commissioner Lober. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes unanimously. Thank you. Would you like to speak?
Just say a quick thing. Thank you all for inviting me here, and I'm really glad to be able to make a difference on the community. And I'm, looking back, I'm very proud of my achievements, and I hope I could go forward and continue making great strides. Thank you.
Commissioner Lober?
Quick question for you.
Yes.
So the aircraft badge that's blue and red that you have third from the top on your far right, what's that?
That is the aircraft merit badge. We went to FIT's facility. This was way back when I first started, and we actually got to work on some small Cessnas, and we got to look on the inner workings. And we didn't get to fly in any, but we went around their hangar, and they had a bunch of activities set up, talking about aircraft and how they're made and how to navigate, with radar and all the instruments and stuff. So it was very, very cool.
Awesome. Thank you.
Thank you.
Great.
Ryan? Parents want to get in the picture? All right. Mary Ann. Mary Ann, oh, there you are, way back there. And you have,
Couldn't bring the big guy, so I brought the little one.
okay. Well, he's cute too. Whereas drowning is a leading cause of death and lifelong disabilities to children under the age of 5, and boating fatalities are mostly the result of boaters not wearing life jackets. And whereas with temperatures on the rise as we head out to enjoy summer activities, parents are reminded to always watch young children playing in or near any body of water and ensure that life jackets are available and worn when boating. And whereas Drowning Prevention Month was established through a collaborative effort across the country to promote water safety and drowning prevention along with Safe Boating Week, which has been identified by the United States Coast Guard, coincides with this same period. And whereas Josh the Otter, which is what she's got there, where was I? Okay, whereas Josh the Otter, I'm new at this. Whereas Josh the Otter, water safety awareness projects were first conducted throughout Brevard County by Rotary Club members and are now done in over 40 states to promote water safety awareness. And whereas Swim Safe Forever educates our community about layers of protection necessary to prevent drowning and provides access to survival swim instruction through scholarships. And whereas the Florida Department of Health in Brevard County recognizes that drowning is 100% preventable and promotes public awareness through educational outreach. Now therefore be it resolved that the Board of County Commissioners of Brevard County, Florida does hereby unanimously recognize the month of May 2019 as Water Safety and Drowning Prevention Month and urges all residents and visitors to recognize the vital importance of water safety and drowning prevention education. Done, ordered, and adopted in regular session this 7th day of May 2019. Madam Chair, I recommend we approve this resolution.
Motion by Commissioner Smith,
Second.
second by Commissioner Lober. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes unanimously.
You have the floor.
Well, I would like to thank the Board of Commissioners and the Board of Education in Brevard. We started this program with Rotary back in 2010, and every year since then, the number of school children that the Rotary clubs in Brevard have taught to the school children has increased. We have now reached over 12,000 students in pre-K and kindergarten with the Josh the Otter Water Safety Literacy Program. We actually go into the schools and we read to the students the story about Josh the Otter. Josh, believe it or not, was the name of the little boy that Blake and Kathy Collinsworth from Lincoln, Nebraska, lost in their brand new home when they were getting ready for open house. And they looked around and they wanted to know where Josh was, and unfortunately they found him at the bottom of the pool. Blake was absolutely devastated, the father, and he did some research and he found out that the number of children under 5 years of age, Florida is one of the leading states for the number of deaths by drowning. He found out that there was a program with the National Prevention of Drowning going to be happening in Miami. And he went to Miami, and lo and behold, Jim Underwood, a retired admiral from the Coast Guard, was also down here. And he was a member of the Breakfast Club of Merritt Island Rotary. And he hooked up with Blake, and that's how Rotary got started in the Josh Foundation. So I kind of miss my partner, Jim Underwood. He's been here year after year after year. And unfortunately, he is up in North Carolina for some medical reasons, and he couldn't be here today. And Josh has been so busy the first week of May that we had to give him a rest because he's been going up and down the 95 and US 1 corridor to all the different school systems. So the little guy is here. So, and I know Commissioner Smith takes Josh the Otter, and he does do readings in the schools. So the public, anytime you're interested, the schools are always looking for parents or willing volunteers to come in. And we would be happy through Rotary if you will come, and we'll give you the Josh book, and you can go in and hook up with the pre-K and the kindergartens and do a little reading of Josh. And then we give them a little patch. Josh never swims alone, and children promise that they will never go near the water unless they're with an adult. So I thank you for the recognition for all of the Rotaries in Brevard County, and I'd be happy to accept that resolution.
I would like to add to your story. Blake, the father, he wrote the book, Josh the Otter.
Yes, he
That's where
did.
he created Josh. And it has a terrific effect when I go to these elementary schools and read the story about Josh the Otter, and they put it in the context of a little otter that has to learn how to swim. And his mother always takes him, and the little boys in the neighborhood, other little otters, teach him how to swim. And it gets the kids' attention. So it's a great story, and it's a wonderful program.
So I'm honored to accept that. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you all. I'm losing my voice, too. Thank you all.
All right, we're not done. Lieutenant Tim Thomas, front and center. And Derek Smith,
That's Lieutenant Colonel Tim Thomas.
Lieutenant Colonel, that's right, I'm sorry.
Oh, it's just a rank, it's not...
Yes, sir.
Yeah, it's just a break. Okay. Whereas Colin Seeley, a sophomore at Vieira High School, is a lacrosse player and a member of the ROTC. And whereas on April 1st, while running laps during 7th period ROTC training class, he suffered a sudden cardiac arrest and collapsed. Whereas ROTC instructor and Melbourne City Councilman Lieutenant Colonel Tim Thomas and Vieira High School head football coach Derek Smith, who happened to be nearby, immediately began administering CPR and utilized the school's AED unit. Thankfully, they have one. And whereas it is very likely that Colin would not have survived without the skill and quick action of Tim and Derek. They are true heroes. And whereas Colin's father, who is currently deployed in Afghanistan, was able to return to Vieira a few days after his collapse. His parents and siblings stayed at the Orlando Ronald McDonald House due to the efforts of Vieira High School JV lacrosse coach Joe Rodriguez. And whereas Vieira High School JV lacrosse head coach, boy, say that fast, Mike Sharrow and assistant coach Joe Rodriguez visited Colin almost daily while in the hospital at Nemours. Coach Joe established a GoFundMe page for Colin's family that has currently raised over $14,500. And whereas Colin was released from Nemours Children's Hospital during the week of April 21st, and he actually resumed classes on April 29th. Now therefore be it resolved that the Board of County Commissioners of Brevard County, Florida do hereby recognize and honor Lieutenant Colonel Tim Thomas and Derek Smith for their heroic actions on April 1st in saving the life of Colin Seeley. Done, ordered, and adopted in regular session the 7th day of May, 2019. Madam Chair, I recommend that we approve that resolution.
Motion by Commissioner Smith,
I'll definitely second that one.
second by Commissioner Lober. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes unanimously.
You have it.
We definitely want to thank you. it's obviously a humbling experience to be able to, have this said, but what I would like to point out, and I know Colonel Thomas is the same way, is we want people to hear this. The importance of education. We were thankful to have a school board that provided our schools with AEDs. We're also thankful to be educated. Both of us were educated in life-saving techniques, which is not the case all the time. I mean, there's so many people in this community that are not educated in how to save lives. So I know that both of us, want to really resonate this to you guys to continue to find ways to educate our community and how to use an AED machine, how to perform life-saving CPR, because that AED machine is the difference between life and death. We had to learn that as a first-hand experience, and as many times as I've gone through CPR training as a coach, because it's something we have to do on a yearly basis, it never went through my mind that we'd have to do this. And until you have to do it, it's an unbelievably insane experience that you have to go through. And without the teamwork of this man right here who I admire, and I leave my kids' lives in his hands, it's hard to explain. Our team worked together with that AED machine, and the fact that our school provided us with that allowed us to be able to sit here and talk about this situation instead of something else. So if we can pass something on to you is, in your districts, continue to find ways to promote education, continue to find ways to find AED machines to go around to the public, because they save lives, and without it, we wouldn't be here today.
Yeah, I tell you, the AED machines, lifesavers, CPR, the mouth-to-mouth, all of that essential, but also, and we can't legislate this, but it also helps to pray in the name of Jesus. And I know Coach Smith, both him and I are Christians, and we were doing that the whole time. And so God has a special purpose for Colin. I've told him this today, as a matter of fact, that he is special. And God has something very special for that young man to do in his life. And obviously Colin's got to find that and pursue it. But I tell you, when you have, I've been to combat a couple times, and I've seen some pretty ugly things before. But when you see a young man that that's part of your program, his sister and his brothers were part of your program, his mother is your booster club president, that's an entirely different emotion that you go through. And so that was very tough. And I thank Derek Smith for being there, because when he initially went down, we were probably a good couple hundred yards away from the building, away from the AED. And had he not been there and saw me struggling to get Colin up off the ground, and then pulled up with the golf cart, and us be able to put him in to get him up closer to the building, to the AED machine, that was seconds, 15, 20 seconds that we saved at least. And so I know I appreciate Derek being there. And again, we were a team working while he was setting up the AED machine. I was doing chest compressions, mouth to mouth, and that all helps. If the two people being available, it definitely helps. The equipment is essential, and also the educational part of this. Hopefully, we can get some momentum going into the next legislative session to help Sean Sima, who is here, and of course his daughter Lexi went through the same thing just back in 2016. So really, Bureau High School has had 2 students. Now think about this. We've had 2 students that have had sudden cardiac arrest in the last 3 years. And so you think, well, it can never happen. It can never happen to me. It can. And this is why the education is important. This is why the equipment is important, and why we need to get this legislation passed. And hopefully we'll be able to do it next legislative session. The other thing I just want to do is I want to brag about the Brevard County support that really came out in force to help this family out. The GoFundMe page, $14,000 raised, Joe Rodriguez and Ronald McDonald House. That was unbelievable. The hospital team at the Children's Hospital there was just fantastic. The Booster Club from Bureau High School, the staff from Bureau High School. I mean, everybody just came together as one. And you know what? It's easy to turn on the TV at night, and you can get really frustrated, and you can think, you know what? The world's going to hell in a hay basket. But this really kind of inspired me to see the community come together and watch these folks just really pray for the family and bring, and help this wonderful family out. And the Seeley family, oh my goodness, Renee Seeley, you are one of the strongest people I have ever seen in my life. what she went through, and she was the rock of Gibraltar. I mean, she never wavered. She was never scared. She never showed it. And she was just remarkable. And so, just a whole team effort. And again, we thank you for this recognition. But most importantly, we've got to get some momentum going into the next legislative session to help Sean Sima out and getting this legislation passed for more equipment, training, and a requirement for the CPR training for students. So we thank you guys.
And let us know what you're doing, because if we, can make sure we go in with the same message, that'll be good. And
Yes,
we're happy
ma'am.
to help. I'm sure all of us up here would be willing to help. And obviously, I have a little bit of a medical background, so I can help as well. And
Absolutely.
so anything you need, just reach out.
Yes, ma'am. And
And
Sean
thank
Sima,
you.
where are you, Sean? I saw you. And so, Sean, definitely we need to hook you guys up, because we're going to need her. Yeah,
And thank you. I mean, I had heard about these heroic, you never brag on yourself. I didn't realize it was you, and we're friends, and I didn't realize it was you that was part of this. So I don't know Derek. I'm partial to your name because my son is Derek. But I thank you guys. I mean, it's there's local heroes that we don't hear about until it hits close to home, and thank God you guys were there. And I think I like your idea of having sports require EKGs. I think that's smart. An EKG isn't foolproof, but it definitely can show us anomalies that we wouldn't otherwise know unless they have that. And it's so simple, because we do EKGs. I do EKGs for my patients all the time for employment, for school programs, even at college level. And so why shouldn't we be doing them for our athletes? I think it's important.
And we just caught a football player 2 weeks ago that is
I-
currently going through cardiologist is examining him and going through everything. He's been taken
I've had a
away from
17-year-old with symptoms that just happened. I just asked the right questions with symptoms, and we picked up on something that, without the right kind of questions, or without, probing a little further, we wouldn't have known. So I think it's important. I think it's great. And thank you for all you do. And
Thank you, guys.
and thank God he's okay.
Yes,
God was certainly watching over all of you.
absolutely. Hey, can we get, I'd like to get Owen a bracket. This is Colin's best friend, and this kid was worried about this young man and just breathed for him for a couple of weeks. So I want Colin in a picture. Colin. And Joe. And Joe, yes, Joe Rodriguez, get up here.
Look at dragon. Can you lay down front?
All right, Paula and gang, come on up. How appropriate that we're honoring nurses next. And these are personally some of my favorite people, so makes it even greater.
All of them?
I don't know all of them, but I'm sure if they're anything like the others that I do know, they're amazing. Yes. All right. This is a proclamation honoring Nurses Week. Whereas registered nurses in the United States constitute our nation's largest healthcare profession, and whereas in the future the demand for qualified registered nurses will be greater than ever, because of aging in the American population, the continuing expansion of life-sustaining technologies, and the explosive growth of home health care services. And whereas the depth and breadth of registered nursing profession meet the different and emerging healthcare needs of the American population in a wide range of settings, including hospice care. And whereas hospice nurses take on a critical role in caring for terminally ill patients and their families and are often overlooked despite their important contributions to healthcare profession. And whereas hospice nurses provide expert administration of care with a calm and attentive presence and an unwavering spirit of compassion that invites comfort and peace throughout the end-of-life journey. And whereas the week of May 6th through 12th has been designated National Nurses Week, and this year's theme, 4 Million Reasons to Celebrate, is a nod to nurses' sheer numbers and an open invitation to hashtag Thank a Nurse for enriching our lives and the world we live in. Now therefore be it resolved that the Board of County Commissioners of Brevard County, Florida, does hereby proclaim the week of May 6th through 12th, 2019 as National Nurses Week, and ask that Brevard residents show appreciation for all registered nurses, not just during this week, but at every opportunity throughout the year. Done, ordered, and adopted in regular session the 7th day of May, AD 2019.
Make a motion to approve.
Motion by Commissioner Pritchett, second by Commissioner Smith. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes unanimously. Thank you.
I'm from
Okay.
Hospice of Health First, and we want to just say thank you for recognizing us, for Christine, who used to be one of our nurses and worked her way up. So we're very proud to have one of us sitting up there. We brought just a few of our nurses. Hospice of Health First has about 70 nurses currently. They're taking care of about 300 patients countywide. The goal with hospice is for patients to be able to stay in their homes. Most people in the end don't want to be in a hospital, don't want to be in a facility, don't want to be in a hospital. You know, that's just not, it's not a fun place to be when you've made that decision to elect comfort care. So these are some of the group of them that cover countywide. We go from Titusville, Mims, Scottsmore, down to Barefoot Bay, Micco, Malabar, over to Sebastian, and up both sides. So obviously whoever designed Brevard County was not in home health care because it's a very long county and there is no good way to get anywhere. So we do appreciate, we thank you very much. We'll be taking this back to all of our staff meetings to share this as well.
And I just want to, of course, I'm a little biased because I used to work, not just for you, but I still work in the Health First system, and I have to say it's the best system in the county, and by bar none. But I think often, like you said, hospice, you know, a lot of times people don't know what we do, and they don't realize that we cover the entire county. And with home health care, we also have the ability, we have an inpatient unit as well that can manage those patients, because sometimes we have elderly that can't take care of their loved ones because they're frail or because there's not enough family here to assist, or it just becomes overwhelming. So we also have that inpatient unit option. But it's, you know, I love what I do as a nurse practitioner. I love my patients. I love seeing people every day, and I love the whole clinician part of it. But my heart will always be in hospice, because it is not just rewarding for what we get back from families that we're able to help, but it's also, it's such a contribution, and it's such a wonderful thing. And if, you know, you've had a family touched by hospice or have ever used hospice services, you know, I mean, it's a special kind of person that not only does it, but that, you know, we care about families and we care about our patients, and it was an honor and a privilege to be a part of it, and honor and a privilege to work with all of you. So thank you for everything that you do.
And it's nice that hospice doesn't stop when the patient passes away. It continues for 13 months. We have a large bereavement program that follows our families afterwards, because there's so much that happens afterwards. You tend to operate on autopilot for a little bit, but for that next 13 months, getting through the first anniversaries of everything, you know, the first Christmas, the first Memorial Day, the first anniversaries.
And for children, too.
And for children as well, yes. So a big focus on that piece of it. We took care of 1,300 patients last year alone in Brevard County, and then all of those patients, plus a lot of our community support, has advanced then into our bereavement programs. So very large program. You don't realize how large hospice is or how many patients we're taking care of at home. Larger than some of our hospitals.
So we have Dr. Ruiz, too. I couldn't go without saying Dr. Rudy Ruiz. He's not a nurse, but I'm telling you, with happy nurses and with a fantastic doctor, it makes your job a lot easier when you have an excellent doctor. And Dr. Rudy Ruiz is probably one of the most caring physicians I've worked with, besides the current physician I work with. I love him, too, but I wouldn't work for him if I didn't. He's amazing, too, but a different kind of practice is all.
May I add one thing
Sure.
about Dr. Ruiz? I'm actually upset with him because he was my internist, and he was so good when he left to go on the hospice route. I was
Sorry
upset
about
with him. But he was great. He was great.
Pass that along.
Yeah,
Yes.
if you let him know, please.
Yes, I'll do that.
You wouldn't be the first.
Yes. Well, thank you very much for the recognition. We really appreciate it.
Thank you.
Makes me mad.
You guys might want to get out while you can, because we're going into... This is your free pass to leave, unless you want to stay for the meeting. Thank you, guys. We'll give everybody a few seconds to get out. That was a good group of resolutions.
Kind of all mesh well.
Yeah. They're all kind of related.
Same vibe.
Yeah. All right. Moving on to item F, consent agenda. Does anybody want anything pulled? Can I get a motion for approval?
Move to approve.
Motion by Commissioner Lober.
Second.
Second by Commissioner Tobias. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes unanimously. Okay, item G, public comments. I have Sandra Sullivan. Hi. Name and address. You start.
Sandra Sullivan, 165 Dorset Lane, South Patrick Shores. Second. So this past week, the Florida, or the Brevard DOH report came out with higher incidences of cancer in our area. That was something we expected. It's why we started looking into the issues in our area. And I just wanted to, you've read the report, so I don't need to go over that, but I wanted to address a couple theories I have pertaining to what might be contributing in our area. But first I wanted to say is, one of the things that the report did not address is, it addressed all of 32937, but that's a wide area from South Patrick Shores down to Indian Harbor Beach. And one thing we don't know is whether it's higher, closer to Patrick Air Force Base in, say, for example, South Patrick Shores. There is a report done by a third party with a heat map that indicates it is considerably higher up there. So I would encourage Brevard Department of Health to look at that aspect and continue, as well as investigating other cancers which are not PFAS. That was a PFAS-related cancer assessment, and looking at the other types of cancers. So the theory is a combination of four things that may be impacting health. One is the military dump in South Patrick Shores. The second is a drainage channel that is on the EPA EPIC study that went from the military base down to Satellite High School, which would have been designed to drain the dump, and in doing so carry contaminants from that old dump. The Patrick Air Force Base also, I've read their numerous reports on the Air Force Public Records site. They have drainage channels from all of its dumps to the Banana River. The contaminant testing needs to be done on the lagoon. I believe that in addition to the county using the military establishment has been using it to dispose of contaminants. Today I came from mapping and looked at maps, and in 1988 was the first assessment of where all the dumps were on that base. And we determined that they put it, anyway, I'm just going to bypass that. I'll follow up with you guys that later. On the dump, there were bombs, there were barrels, 55 barrels of oil, hydraulic fluid, other unspecified liquids. There were batteries, and so the EPA report, I've sent you this, details what was in there. In addition to the chemical contamination, we're also concerned about the munitions because there were reportedly bombs there as well as full belts of ammunition, and that is related to also a carcinogen in an EPA 2015 report.
Thank you.
So I just wanted to, the reason I mentioned that is in addition to the dump, there are the munitions aspect as well.
Okay,
Okay, thank you.
thanks. Chet Ellsworth?
Chad Ellsworth, Indy Atlantic. Commissioners, I'm here to extend my appreciation and show support for your interest in this Space Command endeavor. I'm concerned that about transparency. It's a big, huge project for the future of this county, and the impact that it's going to have on our futures is unbelievable. I am concerned about how, is there going to be a website set up so that there's transparency between information studies on what's happening? You're going up to Washington and talking to people, and
Do you want me to respond now, or do you want me to wait till you're done your 3 minutes?
oh yeah, I'm just here to find out how it's going to work.
They haven't even decided on a location yet? They haven't decided?
No, I know they're going to
Yeah.
pick that. It's going to take some time, but
Right,
in that part of it, as it goes on, there's competition between parties. There's influences from other people. My
Right.
firm is doing a study on the Mueller effect on this upcoming Space
Right.
Command thing. And so I would be interested to know if there's something out there
yeah.
that's been decided.
I mean, the only thing that I brought back to this board was the fact that we were able to get a meeting with the Secretary
Oh,
of the
that's
Air
it, huh?
Force. Well, that's all I
Well-
know until now, until I can just
Yeah.
at least pitch Brevard County as a possible
Well,
location.
for one, I really appreciate you guys
Talk about our
picking up the
assets.
tab, and maybe we can get something.
But I will
Go.
keep this board and the public informed of everything that we do, because any gains that we make, and some have said it's a long shot, because we're competing with Colorado and that sort of thing, but it's definitely something
We
that,
would support as much documentation on any of these things. Thank you.
thank you. All right, that's all the public comment cards I have. Item H1.
This is a petition to vacate a portion of 2 public utility and drainage easements located on Lot 33, Block A of the Indian River Village subdivision. This is in order to remove an existing pool and screened patio as encroachments. Notices were sent out to county agencies and public utility companies, and we've received no objections, and staff has no concerns with this request.
Okay,
Is that a comment card for this one? Or?
if there's questions.
Okay, just if there are questions. Move to approve.
Motion by Commissioner Lober,
Second?
second by Commissioner Pritchett. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes unanimously. Item H2.
Commissioners, this is an amendment to Article 8 entitled Fertilizer Use on Urban Landscape. The amendment would require a notice to consumer signage at retail outlets for fertilizer. Other locations have found that,
Virginia,
yes.
microphone.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Other locations have found that compliance with local ordinances increases when consumers are notified at the point of sale, and signs will be provided by the county funded through the half-cent sales tax for the lagoon.
Madam Chair, I'd like to make a motion to approve this.
Second.
Motion by Commissioner Smith, second by Commissioner Lober. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
Nay.
Motion passes 4-1 with Tobias in opposition. Commissioner Tobias, sorry. Call him Johnny, right? Item H3. Oh, I'm sorry. I had a card for, would you like to talk, Mary? I'm sorry. We've got like a boatload of cards up here, and I apologize for missing it. H3? Okay. Is anybody going to talk about it?
Make a motion to approve.
Second.
Motion by Commissioner Pritchett, second by Commissioner Smith. Commissioner Tobias?
Yes, Madam Chair. I do have a question. Who would be?
I'm assuming this is your card.
Yes.
Can you state your name?
Jennifer Hassagen from the Economic Development Commission.
Welcome. My office received an unsolicited phone call yesterday about an employee who had been laid off recently from BK Technologies.
Okay.
My question is, since part of this was dealing with creating new jobs, and I have no way to verify whether or not this person didn't leave their name or anything, but I'm sure you've done the work. Has this company laid off any number of individuals in the past couple of years?
To my knowledge, they have not laid off a number of individuals in any chunk. No, I do not know if they've laid off individuals here or there, and as business needs change, I'm sure that they have scaled down and hired up again. But I have not gone back to determine their exact employment history and how it has varied over the years.
So, thank you. My question is, if the intent here is to bring in jobs, I'm concerned if they laid off people and then we're hiring a whole bunch of people to make up for the people they laid off in order to get the tax incentive. Do you think that that's probably something, to again, this completely unsolicited, I mean, do you have any SEC filings or anything like that would show that, as you say, that it isn't a great number? Because we're not talking about creating also a great number of jobs here either. So I want to make sure, I'd feel a lot more comfortable if I knew that had not taken place.
Okay. We have reviewed the recent SEC filings, and I have not seen any regarding layoffs. I don't know if it was one individual, what the true reason behind that may have been. They did hire a national site selection firm, which would lead me to believe that this is a competitive project and that they are serious about hiring new employees.
Yeah, I'm not doubting
I've
that
never
they're
seen where a company has laid off and then rehired in order to receive the incentives. I would not believe this is a company that is doing that. They're well-known in the community, good standing in the community.
So when you, so one follow-up. So, Madam Chair, I'm sorry.
Sure.
So when you said and I haven't personally, when you reviewed the former SEC filings, the last few years, is that what, or are we just talking?
Just very recently, we have looked into
the
them.
last year?
Yes, yeah.
So
And I don't see any massive layoffs. But
Well,
again, a
wouldn't you-
company scales down and hires up as necessary. They do have a small number of employees, relatively speaking, here as is. They have 100 employees. They seem to fluctuate somewhere between 98 and about 113 at a given time.
Okay, so I'm just trying to figure this out. That's a fluctuation of 15, right?
Yes.
And how many, again, I'm sorry, how many jobs was this going to?
This
potentially
project is 35 positions.
35 positions.
Correct.
Okay. Thank you. I'm sorry. I honestly we just got a call out of the blue, and he was concerned that, again, he would not leave his name. Don't
Sure,
have
I
any,
can
don't have
understand
any
the concern.
verification, but it certainly was cause for concern on my end that a company would do that in order to benefit. Thank you.
Commissioner Lober?
Commissioner Tobias, if you want to move to table this or continue it out to the next meeting, I'm happy to second that and support that if that would make you more comfortable to get that additional information. Up to you.
Yeah, I think that in all, this happened literally today. And had I had more time, I would have certainly sent an email out, but I didn't. In honest, and I mean, to put it bluntly, incentivizing businesses over others does not meet my philosophy one way or another. It won't meet it this week. It won't meet it 2 weeks from now. This was an interesting wrinkle that was brought to my attention I didn't think of, and apparently, the SEC filings have fluctuated up to, or whatever, what was it, 15?
Approximately.
Approximately 15. So, we may actually only have a net of, 20 jobs here instead of 35. So, but either way, whether we wait now or later, I'll be voting no.
Thank you.
And I'll just say, my office never received that call. Did any other commissioner office that you were aware of receive that call from an employee that was laid off? I'm not saying that that's not true, what happened with Commissioner Tobias, and I wouldn't question him being truthful and honest, but I find it unusual that they would only call one commissioner's office. Could be a disgruntled employee, may not even, it's hard to verify whether or not it's true at all. So I can't base my decision on an employee that no longer works for a company. And so, taxpayers overwhelmingly supported tax abatements. This isn't a cash incentive, so I'll be supporting this. With that, I have a motion. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed?
Nay.
Motion passes 3-2. Item I-1.
Good evening, Board. This is a request for legislative intent and permission to advertise amendments to Chapter 2, Article 6, Division 2, entitled Code Enforcement Special Magistrate, and Board direction regarding the establishment of code provisions to authorize the special magistrate to make the final decisions concerning fine reductions. And additionally, we're asking for permission to look at some other streamlines in the areas of relating to the code enforcement, which would include codifying the rules of the special magistrate, the posting procedures and clarification, and a resolution revising or the establishment for the fines, and the hearing and administrative cost. This item came to us on February 26, 2019 of this year, where the board asked us to explore looking at delegating that authority to the special magistrate as the final determination and the reductions for the fines. To aid the board in the discussion, we've provided 4 options that we see as potential outcomes. Of course, there may be others. Option 1 would be to provide the legislative intent and permission to advertise, modifying our code provisions to authorize the special magistrate to make those final decisions. Option 2 would include the items that we see as efficiencies, and while we're there in that code section, we would ask that you allow us to do these items as well, which would be codifying the rules of the special magistrate, revising the courthouse postings to allow us to post in the VR Government Center as well, expand our courtesy notice program, and also examine the assessments and hearing and administrative cost resolution And so the third option would be granting permission for us to move forward with both of those. And then, of course, the fourth option that we have identified here for your consideration would be to send us in a different direction. If you have any questions, we're happy to answer them for you.
Commissioner Lober?
Just real briefly, as to 2B, it just makes sense. I don't think I've ever seen anyone go to a courthouse looking for postings. And I've been to the courthouse, all of the courthouses, many times. Given that folks would probably be a lot more likely to have involvement with the government offices here, it just makes sense to me, regardless of what else we choose to do or not do, that we post in the government center in lieu of posting in the courthouse.
Commissioner Smith?
Yeah, I'm just going to push my button.
I saw.
I've looked these over, and I think option 3 would be the way to go. I'll make a motion unless somebody else has another opinion.
I have a motion by Commissioner Smith.
Second for discussion.
Second for discussion by Commissioner Pritchett. Commissioner Tobias?
First of all, I want to thank Tad's office on this. This was quite a work, quite an undertaking, and I think you've done a magnificent job on this. That is going to be not only better for the board, but as well better for your staff, and most importantly, the citizens. So I want to thank you for that. Also, I'd like to fully support Commissioner Smith in his motion when it comes up. But again, hats off to you guys for the amount of work that you put into this. We will see savings at almost every meeting. So I can't say thank you enough on that.
I would just say, I was hoping that we would have, maybe not as part of this, but a review of the fine structure, because it seems like, in my heartburn with the special magistrate, is it seems like he always reduces to about the same percentage for just about every case. And sometimes those mitigating circumstances, and I'm glad that that's part of this review, you don't fully explain. I mean, it seems like it's always the same percentage. And so if the fines are so egregious that and the person has corrected the problem, and the fines are so exorbitant that it makes it so unaffordable that somebody feels a need to come here, which isn't always the case, but is often the case, maybe that's somewhere we need to look too. I mean, I want to not make it so it's not worth somebody fixing the problem, but when the fines, and my concern, and I think I said this before, but when the fines are so high, they just kind of throw their hands up and don't fix the problem at times because they feel so buried underneath it. Or they weren't aware that there was a code enforcement thing because it's a property changing or otherwise. So I just, if the goal is to get people to come into compliance or to fix the issue, that should always be the goal number one. And I want us to recover our costs, but I don't want it to make it so punitive to somebody who, has fixed the problem, if that makes any sense. I don't know if the board's interested at all at looking at the possibility of fines that aren't so ridiculous.
I'd be in favor of looking at that.
I mean, could we make that as part of our option?
I believe that we could expand option 2D to take a look at that piece of it. If the motion were to carry forward, that's certainly something that we could roll in if the board was, so wish for us to do.
And I think my only other concern at this point would be that, if the magistrate's the end-all, be-all, then there is no appeal to us, and that kind of scares me because that sort of takes away that right to come to us. It's easy for us to defer to what the magistrate, but we're ultimately accountable, and those are our residents that we're representing, so I don't know that I like losing that ability to do that. So, Commissioner Smith?
Yeah, I would just like to say I fully support your idea of looking at these fines, but from my perspective, in having seen these, I feel it's necessary to get their attention, because I think the numbers you used yesterday, 95% of the people comply, and it's roughly 3% eventually that don't, or something like that.
Yeah, we have 92% voluntary compliance with our code enforcement program, and that's on average out of about 2,400 cases a year. So when you look at that and you take that 8% and you break it down, there's about 5% of them that go to the special magistrate hearing, and then there's a hearing cost associated with that, and then there's 3% that actually will go into having fines assessed. So I mean we're very successful in getting them through the process, having them acknowledge what the violation is and making the corrections. We just have that 3% that we would like to improve on.
So in your estimation, do the fines as they stand now, do they get their attention? Because it seems like if they're 92%, that's a pretty high batting average. So it gets their attention 92% of the time. So it's just the other 8% breakdown that don't.
I'm not sure exactly what their motive is to come into compliance, but I think that we really, that's one of the things that we present to them. If they don't correct the situation, these are the process that they will go through. These are the fines that could be accrued. The fines are established by the special magistrate. We can look at whether or not they're appropriate. We've looked at what other jurisdictions have as fines within Brevard County, and ours seem to be the lowest from a starting standpoint of, I believe, $25 a day, right?
Yes.
So the special magistrate typically starts out at $25 a day for the fine, but then it really, as that rolls, it depends on the amount of time for the property to come into compliance. So.
Thank you.
Commissioner Pritchett?
I think we have to cover staff time, always, when we're going through this. I think we need to do something that's necessary. I do have a little bit of hesitation in the worst-case scenario. What are people going to do now if we do this? What would be their next step if they're really struggling with the decision? Are they allowed to take it to another place then?
So I believe that their process would be a civil matter, but I do believe that also through the board's ability and delegation that we would be having a cap on that fine, that the special magistrate would have the ability to waive or to reduce based just on your current policies that you have in place.
And if I could just add on a little bit, currently part of the opportunities for a respondent is to appeal the magistrate's decision currently to the circuit court. So there is an avenue for them to pursue if they disagree with the magistrate's decision currently.
Okay, I think we really need to do something, but since the time period I've been on here, we've maybe seen 19, 20 cases, and some of those have gone in the favor of the people that have come in, so that I just want to make sure there was some avenue for those to do something. Are we giving you guys a little more flexibility to do some of those things we would have done then, or?
So I think that what we could look at is setting some guidelines for the special magistrate for
Okay.
mitigating circumstances that the board would like for them to take into consideration. It would be one of the things that we could look at bringing back to you, and then that way you could give us some input if you felt that they were appropriate or if we needed to do more. But I do believe that we have some of that now in some of the different areas of code enforcement. I believe Natural Resources has some of that in some of their wetland violations. What are some things that they can consider as far as irreparable and, if it's a first-time offense or something like that, or the impact on the neighborhood.
Okay, so I think if we just have you come back with some type of fine assessment, that might help me a little bit more. I do think we need to do something, but, and I agree, if someone's had a violation for 3 years, they just haven't got around to it, we have a problem. But, some of these numbers have gotten up to like 40, 50,000, and also somebody would work their way out of that. So if we have an ability to kind of look at it somewhere along this process.
But, excuse me, but if they get the $40,000 or $50,000, that's because they're not doing anything. So I don't get it. What's your problem?
That's not always the case. Sometimes it's property going between people. It's not always the case.
Well,
Well, and that one lady we had, her husband had died, and she was emotional, and there's just sometimes you have to hear it, so.
I get it.
Commissioner Lober?
I think one of the things worth bearing in mind is essentially their recourse, were we to go the direction that's been suggested, is the same as it would be if they came here and didn't like what we've said. It's not that, that they lose that. Essentially, the way that I look at it is you have the special magistrate performing the function that the special magistrate currently performs, plus our function as it currently exists. So they still would have that additional route if they wanted to seek some sort of relief from whatever decision was rendered by the special magistrate. So it's,
But it ultimately wouldn't be us.
yeah, it ultimately would not be us. So I don't know if it's worth looking at maybe saying if it's over a certain amount that it comes to the county commission, or if that's simply overcomplicating it, where if it's something trivial, then let them resolve it. But if it's something of real consequence, if we're talking about $50,000 or $75,000, then maybe it should come
And
back
it's
to us.
all relative to what somebody considers a high amount.
Yeah.
Commissioner Tobias?
I think Tad's office had this already covered on option 2D. I mean, 2D is pretty darn clear. Examination of fine assessment, hearing and administrative costs to include aggregating and mitigating circumstances considered by the special magistrate. So, you know, I think it was his intent, I hope, to be as fair as possible to provide leeway to the special magistrate who is in a better position and has a greater understanding of these type of issues than us, but provide him or her with that flexibility. Is that what the intent was of option 2, part D?
Yeah, yes, sir, but we were asking for legislative intent, so we would be bringing back code changes ultimately for your approval at a later time. So you all would have an opportunity to review those mitigating circumstances and tell us if you felt that they were appropriate or if we should do something different.
Okay. And also, too, you said you had like 2,400 cases roughly or whatever, 92% are ultimately resolved. These 92% aren't people who are being fined, too. These are just people that have code issues, correct?
We get about 2,400 complaints a year,
Complaints,
which then
right.
we investigate. Some of those there is no violation, some of them there are violations, and we work with them.
And some of them our office is handled by just knocking on a neighbor's door, so.
Yes, yeah.
So I don't know that these people would qualify as part of that 92% compliance, at least in my opinion. And if 72 people, because that's about 3% of 2,400, that this would affect, I'm a little nervous about taking that. I mean, these are our ordinances, these are our codes. I get a little nervous about people not having that option to appeal to us, because there's always mitigating circumstances. And as much as, I know people, at least some of us up here, don't like hearing them, I think, it's ultimately up to us, and it's ultimately us that's accountable. So examination of the fine assessment for item D has probably more to do with, the magistrate's leeway than has to do with how we're currently accumulating fines. But that's about the only thing I don't agree with as far as is that ability to appeal to us. Commissioner Lober?
Yeah, I think at this point, since it's just going up for advertising, I'm going to support it, but I don't know that I'm going to support it depending on what the board is inclined to do when this comes back for a final vote. So at this point, I don't want someone to misperceive my support of it today as me being open to anything and everything that may result down the road.
All right, any further discussion? I forget who made the motion. Did I already call it? Commissioner Smith?
Yes.
Commissioner Pritchett? Okay. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Nay. Motion passes 4-1. With negative is Nardi. Yeah, Commissioner negative is Nardi. All right. All right, item H2.
I2.
I2, I'm sorry.
Okay. I2, this item is in response to the board's directive to investigate the cost and liability associated with county staff providing mapping and related surveying services to Ms. Sandra Sullivan for her use in pursuing FUDS eligibility. FUDS is formally used to defend sites. The criteria for FUDS eligibility are whether military-owned, leased, or otherwise possessed, the land at issue, and contamination occurred. We've prepared a staff report which is included with this agenda item. After the submittal of the staff report, we also prepared an illustration showing a total of 6 locations, and I have that exhibit I can share with you now. Ms. Sullivan provided three legal descriptions that are shown on that illustration, which our county surveyor has reviewed and determined that none of the lands described are in the area of concern. We have identified the location on that illustration, and all are north of the Pineda Causeway. Staff then researched and obtained 3 additional legal descriptions and mapped those. Those locations are south of the Pineda Causeway. However, they do not include home sites, and they do not describe lands that are suspected to be previous military waste sites. Our research is based on a very limited amount of documents, but we have completed Ms. Sullivan's request to provide a map illustrating the locations that have been military-owned to the best of our knowledge. Without having additional real estate documentation, there just isn't enough information available at this time to develop a meaningful map. Also, I want to share with you that I did meet with Ms. Sullivan this afternoon. She came in and to look at some aerial photos that are stored in our mapping department. I was able to give her a brief summary of our findings and also a copy of the illustration. And I'd be happy to answer any questions you have.
All right, Sandra?
Thank you. I wish I'd been given an opportunity to have had this in advance. It might have alleviated the necessity for me to come up here. I'm a bit disappointed for a few reasons. The primary document, the most important one, was Book 1, page 93. And I'm going to read you one sentence from that description. Lot 1 and the northeast quarter of the northeast quarter, Section 22, and that part of Government Lot 1 lying to the north quarter of Section 23 and the north half of northwest quarter of Section 23, all in the township where we are. Those on the map, when you look at the area in blue, Section 23. The document he has for Book 1, page 93 is in red. Therefore, there's an error. I would have liked to have pointed that out if I'd been given an opportunity. Also, I've spent some time at the Clerk of Court's office. When I originally made my request in writing to the county, it was to have collaboration between the surveyor, the mapping office, and the Clerk of Courts, and we could have avoided some of the issues. And I also, when I sent him the documents, asked him to be in touch with the Clerk of Courts. Further, in my going to the Clerk of Courts, it was explained to me how this all works. So this document is part of Case 80, Civil Case 80 out of Orlando, where the judgment was originally heard. And that case is comprised of multiple documents. So that the county puts in their logbook one document, but it may not be all of the documents. And so it becomes necessary, I've learned this since I was here last, to actually go to the courts and get a copy of case number 80, civil case number 80. So we have been able to determine since then that that case is housed in Atlanta in the Southern District Courts. So this is going to take more time than what we anticipated. Everything's more complicated. So what I have done is inquired with the Corps of Engineers with their investigation to see if they have those records already, because there is costs associated with getting it out of the Southern District Courts. And I'm waiting back for a response, because then I can proceed with a FOIA to get those documents. Also, and I was speaking about the issue to Jim Waymer, and he offered that the Florida Today may be willing to pay for the costs if we can give him an estimate.
Commissioner Pritchett?
Hi, Ms. Sullivan. How are
Hi.
you? First of all, the struggle you're going through, it's heartbreaking and it's hard because you're the one having to live through this. From studying what staff's given us so far, and our question last time we met was whether we can aid in some types of report. And from what staff has communicated with me, and they were trying, but I'm not sure we're almost qualified to do it. We're going to give you something that's substantial for you to be able to use. I think, and then if we put the disclaimer on it, I don't think it's going to hold water for you. The cost to do it's kind of ambiguous because they don't know where to necessarily get the information. Now, I did ask questions of what you could do with what recourse, and they said you're expecting some report in June that's going to help. Is that correct?
No.
There's some additional testing that the Army Corps is conducting in EPA, which from what I understand, and this is based on my limited information that I have, but I believe June was when they were going to do some air sampling, and I don't know how long that would take to get results from that.
So
but-
that might help. I think what we can do, our best right now, is if you got questions, if we can figure out ways to get some information into your hands. I'm not sure we can lead this march. And then something else I started asking, none of your neighbors are kind of in this with you right now.
There are some neighbors who are not in this with me.
Well, maybe
but-
if they reach out or something. But what we have here going through the reports, they haven't found enough yet for them to jump in all the way. And I'm thinking, I don't know if they will or not. I don't know. But I think this is almost a federal government needing to be led issue because they should be paying for all this.
Right. Can I communicate on the testing aspect? So
Well,
the EP...
I know with that, but I'm
Right.
not sure it's going to be relevant with
It-
this.
It's what you said about the testing in June has nothing to do with this at all.
Well, I think
because-
that'll help the federal government get more involved for you.
Yes,
But
he-
I don't, what you're asking for us to get these maps together, I don't think we're qualified even to do it. And from talking to staff, they're not knowing where to get the resources from.
Okay, so-
I'm not real sure
Right.
that this is something that I can assign the county to. And then I asked, well, who typically does this? And they said they don't usually typically do this. An individual will do this with the EPA or the federal government. But, we're here if you need information and we can find it. I don't mind trying to help you with that, but I'm not real sure this is an assignment that maybe should be for the county government at this point.
What I would suggest is the reason we have a government multi-layered, local, state, federal, is to have checks and balances. And what happened in 1991 is there was no checks and balances on the federal government, on the Corps of Engineers. So they came back and they said the land was not used by them, which is the first criteria. The second criteria is that they never owned, leased, or otherwise possessed. That is the two criteria for eligibility. The first one, in reviewing this document, what they did to the aerial is they clipped it at Peneda to obscure and hide the fact that there are roads from the base directly down into the dump area. So now we can establish that they did use it. Okay, so the second question is, did they own it? And just with this one document, we can show part of Section 23 in the northern part of it that they owned. What was explained to me is that case 80 has additional documents in it. So once I get those documents, I'm just one homeowner of many that this affects. So it's not my responsibility to pay a surveyor to go
I think the federal
against-
government. I
Right.
think it's going to be the federal government. So I think at that time, you might have some more ammunition or information to
So
move forward.
who do you think in the federal government is going to do that part?
I don't know, I think it's going to have to be your research, maybe hire somebody to take it on. But I think they're going to have to find an element that's going to provoke them to move farther.
Okay, so maybe I could do what some of my neighbors do, just sell my land and leave.
Ma'am, I don't know with all that. I'm only one commissioner, you can hear from the others.
We have a
But this is-
DOH report that just came out that shows we have higher incidences of cancer, and if had the county intervened back in 91 and offered some oversight, we wouldn't be here 30 years later. So, thank you.
Commissioner Lober?
Real briefly. Sorry there. Real briefly. I was going to say, I think depending on what you find out in terms of what results from your FOIA request, you may want to come back, because if there's something that county staff is comfortable doing in the sense that they have the expertise, I don't mind pushing them in the direction of helping you, but I think having that information may be beneficial. And I think as well, and it's a suggestion which you're free to take or not, I would really look to see, prior to even coming here, and you don't have to, it just is going to make life easier for you and for us by extension, what staff thinks they're able to do to help with respect to that. And if there is some question about collaboration with the clerk of courts, I can tell you, let me know which individual it is over there, and I'll do what I can from my one of 5 seats to keep in touch with them, because I've never had an issue communicating with anyone over there.
They have been absolutely incredible. I cannot tell you how grateful I am to so many records and so many maps and everything that they've been able to get. I was there on Thursday, and I just want to say they have been hugely amazing. I'm just so incredibly impressed with their office. And I do take your suggestion. I think it's very good. I have done a lot of legwork on this. I will do the legwork to get the FOIA and get these documents. But when I get them, that's outside my area of expertise. And I think it is in the county's interest to act as a checks and balances to make sure that the Corps of Engineers goes in the right direction. But it may be between now and then, we might get lucky and they come back, because the letter is in review right now. And it may be a very short time, and it may come back, yes, and we can say, hey, we don't have to do anything more.
That'd be wonderful if that
Right,
ends up turning
yeah.
out that way. But, just as it's alien for you, it's just as alien for me,
Yeah.
and I imagine for most of the folks here. So,
Yeah.
I would just ask, try to bear with us, because it's not something that, certainly that I feel like I have any expertise in. I'm trying to get myself brought up to speed as much as I reasonably can. But it's an odd issue, and there's certain things that come up frequently with county commission work, but this is not one of them. That really I think will come up in the future, certainly not in the next several years.
It's a very odd situation, and I look at it this way: I could have just sold my property quietly and left, and I decided to do the right thing and do my civic duty for my community and get civically involved. I'm a very private person. I don't do this sort of thing. So for me to step out and do this is very big in my world, and I did it for our community and because it's the right thing to do, because there's this whole sense in our community that people are getting sick.
And that's why I want to help you. So, just to the extent that we're able to, I don't want to have staff do something that's going to put you in a worse position, relying on something that they're not comfortable that they're qualified to put together. But please keep us in the loop when you get that info.
The document said very clearly Section 23 on that one document, and it's not in Section, I just looked at this and went, you have nothing in Section 23, and it's in the document. This is not correct. But thank you.
Commissioner Pritchett?
On that note, that's what I was saying, I'm not sure we're qualified even to put that together. I think, as Commissioner Lober just said, as you get the other information back, and I really think if you get your neighbors to start doing some of this with you, so you have a larger vocal group with the federal government, and then as you need stuff, we can serve some stuff, but I think what you're asking for the mapping for that is maybe beyond our qualification.
What do you mean about my neighbors doing more with me? We have a group
Well,
of like 600, over
But
600 people.
you're pretty vocal, but maybe if you could get everybody else jumping in with
What, you mean
that.
fundraising? That we should fundraise
I
to
don't
do
know,
it?
are you the only one reaching out to the EPA and trying to get some of this information done? You're the only person I see.
I'm the primary point of contact, but I am working with several people in our community who are
Get them-
backing me.
Get them going with you, get them be other
There are
voices
other
with you.
There are other, and in addition to other people in my neighborhood, there's another organization also advocating. We do have people involved other than myself.
No, I didn't mean it like that, but more voices sound more like thunder, and you
Yes.
get more attention.
Yes.
So I wasn't trying to insult you on that. I'm just trying to give you some helpful ideas on what might help you with this process.
Especially if you want federal legislators to help you.
Yeah.
If that makes sense.
Okay, so I'll do some call to actions to have people write lots of letters and bug people. Thank you.
Madam Chair.
Commissioner Smith?
I would like to just thank staff, because they spent an awful lot of time on this, and they went over and above trying to help Ms. Sullivan. So I wanted to offer that thanks.
Okay. Item J1.
Item J1, legislative intent and permission to advertise amendment to modify ordinance 99-17, Section 1. This is to modify the boundaries for the Barefoot Bay Water and Sewer District. To give you a little background, this is catered for the River Grove Mobile Home Park. They've been issued a FDEP consent decree related to the water quality of their private water system. And as a result, as part of the FDEP consent, the language was written to connect into the Barefoot Bay water system. This is only for water, not for sewer. And in such, in looking at our numbers, that we have the capacity to accommodate this. This is to allow us to advertise for the one-day period, at which, if no hiccups occur, we'll come back to the board to ask for approval.
All right, any board discussion or questions? I have no cards.
Make a motion to approve.
Motion by Commissioner Pritchett. Second by Commissioner Tobias. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion passes 4-0. Item I2.
Yes, good evening, Commissioners. This item is requesting approval for advertisement of requests for proposals for state lobbying services. In addition, we're asking for direction regarding the review and evaluation. There are 3 options listed. The first item or option is for the Board of County Commissioners to evaluate the proposals as outlined in the RFP, and that's based on the current selection that was made for the current contract that we have in place. The second item is to appoint a selection and negotiating committee consisting of Matt Wallace, Public Safety Director, Virginia Barker, our Natural Resources Director, and Peter Cranis, our Tourism Development Office Director. The committee would review the responses and bring that recommendation back to the board. The appointment for a selection and negotiating committee comprised of staff that was identified in that option 2, and then also appoint a Board of County Commissioners member is listed as the option 3.
Commissioner Tobias?
Thank you, Madam Chair. A couple of months ago, after I argued to issue an RFP rather than negotiate with our incumbent, the board selected me to sit on the selection committee for the federal lobbyist. Anyone on that selection committee would be able to tell you that Commissioner Smith was absolutely, utterly, and totally right. The market has clearly swung in the direction of drastic rate increases. We were paying $48,000 a year, and the lowest bid that we received was $72,000, or a 66% increase. I don't want to make the same mistake twice. There's no reason to believe that the market would be any different with state lobbyists. Our current lobbyist, Mr. Book, is very competitive. He charges Miami-Dade County $120,000, City of Palm Bay $60,135. I believe normally there's an option 4, discretion of the board. So I'd like to make a motion for discussion, or at least bring up discussion, that the best way to move forward is to direct staff to negotiate with Mr. Book to see if he is willing to continue his services at the contracted rate of $60,000 a year, so we don't run into the same increase that we had for the federal lobbyists, Madam Chair.
Second.
I have a motion by Commissioner Tobias, second by Commissioner Lober. Any further discussion? I would just say I've had the pleasure of working with Mr. Book when I was at the City of Palm Bay, and I don't think you'll find anybody that works harder and has more doors open than him. So I'd be in support of this only because of the feedback and the way that he makes sure that we have what we need, and he reaches out to us and asks us what he can do for us, and that's not something you see with other lobbyists. So I'd be happy to support your motion. Commissioner Pritchett?
I would too. Commissioner Tobias, do you want to put some kind of percentage for them to go ahead and approve it or to come back with this? If he wants more than a certain amount, do you want to give him a little bit to work with?
Are you thinking CPI?
I knew you would be, but I was thinking if he's charging $60,000 a year and you saw a huge jump, do you want to give them an amount to negotiate with before they come back to us?
I think it's not that Mr.
You want
Book
to
would
just
do
come
it, but
back?
it would be, I think it'd probably be best to have staff reach out and at least open negotiations. I think that, Mr. Book is probably not looking at quadrupling this or even hitting anywhere near that 66%. I think CPI is very fair. And the
Okay.
fact that we had a 3-year contract and CPI hasn't been met those 3 years, I think even a CPI to make up for those 3 years would probably be good. But either way, we're not talking anywhere near that 66% increase. But I would certainly trust staff to bring back us a reasonable amount. In fact, one that would be extremely close to that $60,000.
Okay, so I was thinking if they can negotiate that, maybe we could just let them do it then?
And bring back to the board a final contract. Is that?
It's good.
I would amend my motion to give county staff the ability to negotiate.
Second stands.
All right, modified motion by Commissioner Tobias, second by Commissioner Lober. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion passes unanimously. Is staff clear on the instructions?
Yes.
Okay,
I have the instructions. We'll bring that back.
great. Item J3.
This item is a follow-up to the economic development item for BK Technologies. It would be a resolution that would allow the participation with the state incentive program.
I make a motion to approve.
Second.
Motion by Commissioner Pritchett, second by Commissioner Smith. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed?
Nay.
Motion passes 4-1. Item J4. So Commissioner Tobias, I'm assuming?
I don't know
Well,
if
no,
that's a good-
it's not on the,
Okay. I don't know if that's a good thing
Agenda.
or a bad thing. Thank you, Madam Chair. There's been a few instances of measures being proposed in board reports having significant financial impacts. Board reports are unique in that they are not published on the agenda, and the public has no reasonable way to provide input. Secondly, other commissioners don't have time to carefully consider costs and ramifications. Some past actions, full costs were not even determined at the time when they were proposed. So all this would do is create a policy to make board policies can be waived by a simple majority vote, but I'm confident this nuclear option will not have to be utilized except for emergencies. That's the supermajority for fiscal impacts in board reports, Madam Chair.
is that a motion? Or it doesn't have to be yet if you don't want it to be. Commissioner
No,
Lober?
I was going to say that the one thing that concerns me about this, and I understand that policy can be waived by a majority vote by the county commission, but I'm just concerned that if there are exigent circumstances where something truly can't wait, this may make it more difficult to get those exigent circumstances addressed. So if there were some provision to allow for a commissioner to indicate that there are exigent circumstances to move forward, I'd be happy to support it. But obviously that relies on the honor system to some degree.
Commissioner Pritchett?
Yeah, I think since it's at this board, I don't think I'm going to support this, but I would think that if we're going to do this, we're coming in with large item, and one of us asks that we table it to the next meeting, I'd totally be in agreement with that. But since it's, us, I think when we have a majority vote on something, and I don't know, Commissioner Tobias, if you had some ideas of what would happen in the past that we would change, I'd be more than willing to do a table, or that we would ask one of us to bring it back, and I would definitely submit to that myself.
Are you asking,
So-
Madam Chair?
Sure.
Are you asking for?
I'm talking to you.
Are you examples for when this
If you
happened?
got a couple, yeah, because my mind's not there right now, so.
Okay. We voted on, and of course I was in the minority, to give an additional 0.5% raise to constitutional office and employees in the board report. That came up, without the benefit of the public having the ability to comment on that.
Was that during the budget time, sir?
That was during a board report. So in other words, it was not published, and that had serious ramifications on our budget.
Okay.
Let me give you another example
Yeah.
that had serious ramifications on our budget. Ones in which Frank could not quantify at the time, and yet we voted on it, to give employees an additional holiday, which there potentially are some charter issues with that, but nonetheless, I'm more concerned with the fiscal issues on that, which, I mean, we can't expect Frank to have those, County Manager, Mr. Abate, to have those answers offhand, and yet we went forward. Again, I voted against, but it's very difficult, not only for me, but for the public to be able to weigh in on those type of issues without having a dollar figure.
I think you have a good point, and I give you my word, if we're doing that and you say, whoa, table it, I will second your table. But with anything coming forth, like if, I don't know, I just would hate to take away the ability of the board to do its job with a majority. But I hear you, and I think on things that are going to affect large budget items more than just a little period of time, I think we should table it and have discussion next meeting, and that I'm in full agreement with you on.
Commissioner Lober?
Just a quick question for you, Commissioner Tobias. As to that 0.5% increase for the constitutional officers, do you recall roughly what period of time that was in? Because I do recall the second item very clearly that you mentioned, but the first item, I'm trying to get a sense as to when that may have taken place, even a ballpark.
I mean, I can give you the scenario. Do I have the date offhand? Absolutely not. I don't have the date, and I'm sure staff can get that in short order, but we provided generously provided a 3.5% increase to county staff. A constitutional officer decided that 3% was his idea for a budget increase prior to our 3.5%, came back to the board and asked the board to increase his staff's budget from that 3 to 3.5%. And that was at a board report. I don't know that we had, to the best of my recollection, we certainly didn't not have a dollar figure attached to that, yet this board went ahead and voted in favor of that. So I'm sorry, I don't have that date, but that certainly happened up here.
I appreciate it. Thank you.
And if I remember right, I believe, and I could be wrong, but I know one thing that we voted on, we did have those dollar figures, because I remember we had a chart on what it would mean if we increased them. I could be wrong, because this was a while
which
ago,
one?
but on the constitutional office one.
Absolutely not.
And I also had that figure on the employee thing, because that was actually something that I discussed with management before bringing it up during board report. So I am
Well,
with...
discussing with management and giving the board heads up so we can make a informed decision as to cost are completely different scenarios. You know, Sunshine doesn't allow
Right.
staff to act as a conduit. So
And no one suggested that, of course. What I'm saying to you is I had gotten that figure, and that was expressed during the meeting. So I won't apologize for giving employees that holiday, because, things happen. I mean, we obviously always try to public notice everything, but we also have, our county manager who has to bring something to the board, and what constitutes an emergency is very subjective. So sometimes things need to get voted on or passed through, and it is the last minute, and it's not always the ideal timing. So I just worry that this ties our hands too much. I don't think that we abuse it. I personally don't think that we do. And if we do, I have a feeling that you would let us all know when that happens. So I won't be supporting this the way it sits now, and I'm happy to, as Commissioner Pritchett said, if something comes to the board that can wait and that it is important to a board member, I'm happy to table it as well. So I think by tying our hands, I mean, we were the ones elected to make those decisions, and we're accountable for when we do. And I don't remember getting any complaints from citizens or calls to my office complaining about us going with the 3.5% option or complaining with us giving the employees the extra holiday that was in between another holiday, which oftentimes was voted on by previous boards in the past. Commissioner Pritchett?
Commissioner Tobias, on the other, if you would let me know when, I'll go back and look at it. I think what I do remember is when we were working through the budget process, and we all had those numbers really running through our heads pretty tight. But if there's something else, I would be glad to go look at that. And I would definitely support if we got these things coming up and we want to table it and it's not going to harm. I'm with you. I'll table it at that time too, sir.
Commissioner Tobias?
Thank you. To be very clear, I didn't want to bring it up then, but it's certainly a charter issue. Look to your right, look to your left. Those are our employees. Ms. Eden Bentley and Mr. Frank Abate, everyone else are, according to the charter, employees of the direction of Mr. Abate. And I certainly don't want to put him in a position to impact the charter in such a way that puts us in, I think the charter calls it malfeasance, which is a removable offense. So I absolutely, utterly, and don't want to dictate policy to our county manager, whether it be leave or workload, because that is a direct violation of our charter. So, this also would keep us separate, as I think the charter probably intended.
Commissioner Lober?
Well, without going down too far on a segue here, that concern to me seems separate and apart from the time during which it was discussed. So you may have a valid point. It's never been brought up to me in the past in terms of whether that's compatible with the charter. But whether it's discussed in board reports or whether it's discussed in some other item, if it's incompatible with the charter, the action's still going to be incompatible with the charter. So I respect the concern. I don't know that I share it necessarily, but I respect it certainly.
The issue would be, yes, it would be something worth looking into. But when it's a board report, there's no time for the public to look into it. There's no time for us to look into it. There's no time for the media to look into it. It is an affront. It's a blindsiding the rest of the commissioners on fiscal policy. And I think that's what the largest, issue is.
Commissioner Lober?
And I would understand with this applied to things which are essentially snuck into board reports, and if that's what it's intended to prevent, I would jump on what we've had at least two commissioners already say, and if someone has a non-exigent circumstance, or I should say to be a little bit better, if someone's lacking exigent circumstances and they're simply doing it for the purpose of sneaking it in, or it clearly appears that way, I have no problem tabling it, but I just hate to put a rule in place that requires a vote to override that essentially puts us in a compromised position with respect to being able to deal with things that folks don't have the benefit of knowing. I can tell you there are things that sometimes have to be put on the agenda as add-ons that don't make it to the preliminary agenda simply because they're oftentimes not known to individuals that have the ability to put those on the agenda at the time that the first agenda draft goes out. And there are other things, thankfully less frequent, that come up after the agenda is essentially locked in place, and it's not because people are trying to sneak things in there. I agree. By and large, as a general rule, more notice is better, and having something as a line item certainly is better than having it pop up in board reports. But I just have concerns about what potential ramifications this may have that may not be intended.
Such things as holidays are planned out decades, centuries ahead of time. There's no surprise when, Christmas or New Year's is coming up. These don't sneak up on anyone, and I'm just very curious as to weigh the ramifications before we vote on these things. And I'm not certain how I would have voted on that additional holiday had I known the figures, but the way it was put up, that we voted on something. I don't know if you remember at the time. We voted on something we did not have a financial cost on, and I don't mind being seen as a Grinch, but certainly there's no way in heck that I'm going to vote for something where you can't tell me what the cost is going to be, what the impact is going to be on Brevard County citizens that are planning on going to use government services and finding out that those government services are not available. So, that was the intent behind this, to make it a supermajority. I don't believe there's any ill intent on anyone up here. I just think it's probably better for government to be in the sunshine and have everyone the opportunity to speak one way or another with all the information presented instead of blindsided. And I think these exigent circumstances would be agreed upon by 4 or 5 of us, and instead of just 3. So that was the intent, but it sounds like there's probably not going to be a second on this one. So I think it's going to probably go down in flames.
Mr. Abate, I don't want to put you on the spot, but you had that approximation, that figure for us about what the holiday would cost when we voted on it, correct?
Yeah, if I recall correctly, I think I gave the board an estimate, but because we had done, as you have already mentioned, we had done this in past years, and I think I remembered what that amount was and told the board that I think it was approximately.
And has any of the county attorneys ever questioned whether or not it was a charter violation when the board votes to do it? Has that ever been brought to your attention?
Not to my knowledge, I don't believe.
Ms. Bentley?
I have never heard that opinion.
Okay.
From the county attorney.
Would that be your opinion, that we're violating the charter to give the employees a holiday?
I think it's a working decision with the board and the county manager.
Okay. Just curious, because if this was such an egregious thing that the board was doing, I'm surprised that it didn't get brought up until now. So that's why I won't support it, because I think, everything is in the sunshine. I mean, we don't ever walk things on the agenda to be, sneaky or to hide things, because we're all accountable for how we vote. So I won't be supporting it either. I think it ties our hands. So I don't know that there was ever even a motion made, so would there be one? I don't know.
It's very clear that there will not be.
I just didn't know if you wanted to make it formal.
No, I'm sure.
Okay. Item J5, and I have some cards for these. Commissioner Tobias?
Yes. You want me to go prior, Madam Chair?
What's that? Yeah, I mean, you might as well introduce it.
Sure. I brought these similar draft ordinances to the board in October of 2017. The reason I bring them back is several things have changed since that time. Most importantly, there's a new commissioner in District 2 where there was where one of these boards is located. Second, PSJ has become even more inactive than it was in 2017. Since the time when I brought it up, October 5th of 2017, there have been a grand total of 2 zoning requests with recommendation from PSJ, one in the past year. My proposal is to follow the most basic and conservative principles to shrink government, to streamline, and to improve staff and resources efficiency. The proposal is consistent with the original intent of the board. The boards were designed to sunset. PSJ was designed to sunset in 1996. The NMI was designed and written to sunset in 1998. I think someone said there is nothing more permanent than a temporary government program, and this is probably an indication of that. So I could go a little bit further, but at the end of this, I would certainly like to make a motion, or not a motion, but I certainly would like to get the direction of, sorry, I definitely don't want to make a motion, to get the direction of my fellow commissioners to whether to pursue this for legislative intent at a future meeting or to let it go until such a time that something changes with either the board or constituents, Madam Chair.
Okay, I have a few cards, but I've been asked if we could just take a quick break before we get talking. Is that okay? So we're going to adjourn for like 8 minutes, if that's all right?